turn our attention to the offense and tackle the scoring explosion, where we talk about all things Husker offense. And Honky, you started to mention this earlier, but the run pass ratio here was something I really wanted to talk to you more about, because obviously, I was listening to a lot of radio today, and I don't think anybody's quite hit on it the way I saw it, in the sense that we started throwing the ball right off the bat very successfully. And we've had this debate on the show. Is Whipple going to be a pass first guy or not? Sure looked like he's a pass first guy, but it was successful initially, right? Very successful. But you had a lot of time to practice those plays that were scripted and execute them at a high level. And we sure did that. And even through the first half, we had a pretty effective pass offense. But it wasn't a run first offense. And that's where you're pointing out with this run pass ratio, where we only actually run the ball 29 times, which it sounds bad enough, but it's really the yardage. If it wasn't for Anthony Grant's 146-yard dash, we're talking about what, 60, 70 yards and change that we ran for on 28 plays. It was really an ineffective run game. And as the game wore on and Northwestern mounted their comeback, you saw them have a lot more success with their pass rush, and we're jumping on our routes a lot more, right? So it's interesting. Frost has that quote saying that our offensive staff needs to be more creative. And I want to completely push that to the side, because I think there's some merit there, because I think Northwestern figured out what we were doing from a route combinations and those type of things. And maybe Whipple can learn from that and be a little bit more creative as the game goes on to keep defenses guessing. But I looked at it as we didn't establish the run first. And so even though we were successful passing the ball initially, if you can't run the ball, eventually the defenses in the Big Ten are going to pin their ears back and apply pressure. And we talked about Casey Thompson last week. Very good when he has a clean pocket, not so good when he doesn't. Well, yeah, he got a lot more pressure in that second half, and he wasn't the same quarterback. Honky, I mean, how do you see that unfold? I mean, and the frustrations with not establishing that run game, it just got to eat you up inside.
Well, I've been told for a long time you have to be able to throw the ball downfield and have a good passing game to open up the run. And I'll say that's bullshit from day one all along the way. What we need is mobility out of the quarterback. That's what stresses defense. We saw it in the one play when Smothers got on the field, and all of a sudden there was a hole. That little speed option. There's a hole. We just got better blocking that one play, and he goes eight yards down the field, and then we happen to get a 15-yard face mask on him too. Now, I'm not saying put Smothers in, bench Thompson. There's got to be an in-between here. I thought with Thompson, or I thought with Purdy, and I think with any of our quarterbacks, they're mobile enough that you can run some of those counters and some of those speed options with those guys, and those are the things that can stress the defense sideline to sideline. I'm all for a good downfield passing game too. I'm all for it. I think by all means, I think Thompson was a huge step up in the pocket passing game versus Martinez. I don't think there's even a doubt with that. But if that's what this offense is just going to become, if it's literally just going to become what Pitt was, I don't think we don't have Pickett, we don't have Addison. We're in a completely different conference. That's not a recipe for success long term. If this is what we're going to do.
So I don't disagree with you about the running quarterback. I think it does stress a defense. We've seen that under Scott Frost and other coaches for decades here at Nebraska. But a lot of the Big Ten doesn't deploy a mobile quarterback per se. Ryan Helinski wasn't a mobile quarterback. Northwestern ran for 200 plus yards and had 5 yards of carry. They had two good running backs. There was holes to run through. They were effective just handing the ball off and effectively running the ball. And so, we were hoping to see an offensive line that was better at run blocking, that was more aggressive, and against a Northwestern defensive front that was relatively inexperienced. I think they had one or two guys back, but most of their returning starters on the defense was in their secondary. They really didn't get any line push, right? So I totally see what you're saying, but I mean, just breaking down the game, how do we get a better push from that offensive line against?
Rob Zaska would tell you got to get lower. It always starts with the low man wins. I don't disagree there. We also, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois. I mean, those are a lot of teams right now. They're not going to have real mobile QBs either. Nope. They're also going to throw two tight ends, three tight ends, real fullbacks out there. Yeah. It's a different style. This, if we're going to run this style of shotgun spread, 4 wide receivers out there, number one, I mean, we better be good blocking with our wide receivers. And there's a couple plays. There's a good one where Grant gets around the outside, and one of our wide receivers doesn't have a very good block, and that's the guy that pushes them out of bounds instead of Grant having a much longer run. Better have really good blocking wide receivers if you're going to run that style. That's a different looking style than when Iowa goes out there with double tights and triple tights and my gosh, we'll play Minnesota and they'll put 7 linemen on the field. So that's one way that they counter it. So it's not just as simple as saying, hey, just get a more mobile QB out there. But in our case, the style of offense that we're going to run with the shotgun and spread, I like the mobile QB with it. There are gaps that are created by that spreading them out. I think it's become so oversimplified. Like we just didn't push the other team the way they pushed us. And it's like, man, there's so many times we're either outnumbered or somebody's missing the block or whatever it is. But it's also very, to use Frost's words, I don't think he should say it. I think he should say that to his staff that we need to be more creative, because I think it comes off very wrong in a press conference and becomes a quote that gets used against him. But he's not wrong. It wasn't creative. It's shotgun, hike, here we go, handoff, done. How many option motions did we see in the backfield? How many times did you see guys coming across, even if they were fakes? How many times did we ever pull the quarterback and actually run? I mean, I don't want 25 carries out of my quarterback, but the quarterback has to be a threat to run to take the eyes of the defense too.
Yeah,
and it never happened.
I saw one RPO, I think, and Casey, if he would have kept it, would have went for a mile.
And I thought
they didn't, they weren't scared of him at all.
That's what I thought this offense on day one was going to be, with the marrying of some of the Frost and the Whipple stuff. So I think that Frost was getting frustrated by that. There was the 3rd and 2 that they handed the ball off to Grant and he didn't get it. And if Casey keeps it, I mean, he has 5 yards walking.
That's what I'm thinking about. Yep.
Okay, so Frost is frustrated. All right, I get it. But again, what are the conversations that none of us, by the way, are privy to? None of us fans have any idea. What are the conversations that Frost and Whipple have had all offseason? Because if that's the offense this is what Whipple ran. So, I mean, there's no shocker there. This is Pitt's offense. But if Frost doesn't like that, then he shouldn't be finding that out in the second quarter against Northwestern. He should, they should have it pretty well defined what this is going to look like before they get out there.
Yeah, a couple things here. Boomer, can you bring that back up, that question? Because I think, Honky, you can clarify yourself a little bit here. Cole has a question here. He says, completely disagree. Do Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois run a creative offense? That's not what Honky's actually saying at all. He's agreeing with you that they run actually a more boring offense. But Honky's saying if we are going to run a shotgun spread without double tights and all those type of things, we need to be more creative on how we run the ball. If we're going to run the ball with a heavy set like Iowa and Wisconsin do, a whole different story, right? But we're not doing that personnel package. Is that what you're trying to say, Hunk?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to ideally we are some kind of hybrid offense of being a shotgun spread. But if you have a little bit of mobility out of your QB, which is what Thompson can bring, which is what Purdy could bring, and some others and all those guys, then you can do some of the option out of it. But we didn't do any of that. We literally just sat in a pocket, which was a good pocket, by the way. Again, for all the talk of how bad this offensive line is, and was going to be
break down in the second half,
and how terrible their pass blocking were. They were really good in it. I mean, I'm really impressed with a lot of the O-line play. We didn't make any of the mistakes of the offsides and the jumps and all those things either. I mean, I was impressed with some of that, but teams are just teeing off on our run game, and we didn't look like we ever had a counter to it. And that part. We're not good enough just to power over a team. I promise you that. But look at our sets that we have out there. We don't look like we're going to power you over either with 4 wides out there all the time.
Yep. Rob.
So is that something you can fix now, I guess?
Well, Rob, you want to say something? So.
Well, no, and it's okay. Is it something that we can fix? And I think that kind of it actually is part of what I was going to talk about was the biggest what I say strength coming out of camp, right, for our offensive line was supposed to be for the run game. right?
That's what we heard.
Yeah, right. And so that was really frustrating, especially when we had the ball first down after that stupid penalty that Northwestern had. I think it was on like second or third down near the goal line. Gave us first and goal. They gave the ball to Yant twice, and he couldn't even get 2 yards. They couldn't even block enough up front to give him 2 yards to get into the end zone. And that's Yant. This is our guy that's like, 3 yards and carry 4 guys for another 6 yards. So that in my head was just like, okay, there's something else going on here when it comes to scheme that they're not doing to get them that 2 yards, because then at that point they did focus on Yant on the third down. I actually saw a couple of guys follow him over, I think, to the right side, and that's when Thompson was able to go forward for the touchdown.
Right.
Yeah. And our line got high. Our line got high on those goal line runs.
Yeah,
that was bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. And also Northwestern, as pointed out multiple times, Northwestern was really only rushing 4 guys the whole game with our pass offense. And so that gave an advantage. But what happened towards the end of the game when they all of a sudden they decided to, blitz a guy? Some of them went blindside sack on Thompson, where he just got leveled. And because and it was right past Prohaska, or God, I can never say his name. Prohaska, right? It just went right behind him. Almost like stepped on his heel as he was running by, just to, throw an injury to insult, and, he just missed the guy completely, so I don't know. I mean, they need to fix it. Hopefully these next
Rob,
2 weeks.
Boomer to your question, Rob doesn't think so, at least right now.
No, I want to see it. Prove
I
it
think
to
what
me
your
as
answer to Boomer's question is that you need to, if you're going to run the formations we're running, you need to have the mobile quarterback to open things up. Otherwise, you need to change your entire philosophy and go with heavier sets and actually really try to just man up and bowl them over.
Yeah, well, at the very least, we know no matter what, you need to be able to run the football in this league. I mean, I keep hearing about Purdue as some outlier, but if Purdue is what we're shooting for as the model of success, even that is already we're at fault for saying that. But this is 44 passes to 29 rushes being called. This isn't even close to 50-50, and this is in a game that we had a double-digit lead a couple times. So it's not like we were coming from behind and had to throw the ball all the time. I mean, that is not a recipe for success.
It's a perfect running situation. You're up 11.
So, I'll throw this one back to you, Boomer. To Honky's point there with that run-pass ratio, 44 to 29, I guess is what he's saying from a play-calling standpoint. There's a quote that Frost had at the post-game presser, again talking about the offensive staff, saying that they need to have better communication, right? And that one really, really puzzled me, because I'm like, I mean, you've had 8 months essentially to build, this communication of how we're going to do this and what my philosophy is and what Whipple's philosophy is, and hey, this is how we're going to do this, and that then Whipple's making the play calls. I mean, where's a miscommunication going on? The coordination wasn't well enough going into the game one is got to be a concern, right?
Yeah, it was. And that I wondered about that comment too. I mean, you hit it on the head. If you're the CEO coach of this, that should have been solved weeks ago. I mean, that shouldn't be a question after your first conference game, week 0, whatever it is, especially in this kind of scenario where these games are critical to your continued employment as a head coach at this university. You need to have this stuff figured out. You've had spring ball all summer to work on it, without the players, figure out what you want to do, fall camp to work this out. I was kind of flabbergasted by that. And, it also kind of just is odd compared to a previous statement that Frost made. He doesn't care how we score as long as we score points. Well, if you knew what you were getting and now you want to change it, and if you had something in mind, you should have installed that, in this time you had. I don't know why we hadn't. I don't know who's calling the shots behind all this. It's just really bizarre, and I don't get it. And it is odd. And just like what Honky was saying, when you talk about what's successful in this conference, it wasn't a conference game, but I did watch Illinois play, the next game.
Yep. That's right.
Played Wyoming. They had, I think it was 40 passes, 41 rushes. Great. But up nearly 500 yards, 138-6, one handily. Year 2 in Bielema looks pretty good. I mean, maybe that's what you want. I don't know. It seems to be, but it's just, where we're at, I don't know.
Wyoming,
Illinois has an identity. I don't know if we do yet. And
I mean, it's early to read into game versus game. I mean, we don't know anything about Wyoming yet or anything, and wasn't played in the altitude. But Vokalek, Vokalek looked really good while we had him in the early, and he was a difference maker on a lot of those intermediate passes and across the middle. He was the guy that what I think he ended up with maybe 5 catches, was it? But he made his presence known, big body guy across the middle. When he's hurt, the rest of the game, we struggled not just with whether it was him or whether it was Burke Korcher or the backup tight end.
Yeah, he struggled. Whether
it's him or it's Martin going across the middle, or eventually it's Wyatt Lever going across the middle. But we had multiple drops. We had the 2 interceptions across the middle. And I don't really know that I'd hang either one of those on Casey Thompson. I mean, the one to Martin was really weird. Like, it just looked like he didn't make a play on it. Or did I see it different than you guys? It just seemed like he should have just
been saying,
just get your hands up and it was like he didn't know it was coming at him.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. He wasn't really watching for it.
It's happened more than once with Oliver Martin. And there's another. I mean, Oliver Martin's a way to talk about this a little bit is just like the personnel packages. Martin doesn't catch a ball. I don't see him that much, especially early in the game. But the last drive has a completely different wide receiver package than what we started with. We don't see Ramir Johnson play barely at all, except for being the gunner on special teams. Gabe Irvin is dressed and healthy, doesn't play. There's just some weird things there where you're like, I just don't understand why some of this is happening.
Yeah,
and I thought that was. Yeah, and especially with the running backs, I thought that'd be something we'd see a little different. I mean, that was one of our big complaints last year, was just the weirdness of the running back rotation. And granted, again, this is one game, but I didn't understand a lot of it in this game either. So
in some ways, I thought Grant was going to be that workhorse. It felt like it, in the first half.
A fair amount of carries, so he kind of did.
He did.
Yeah,
his closest thing to it. But obviously, Ramir. And the lack thereof, and I don't know, did he even play? There was a number 14. There was a number 14 that was on punt team. I think that was
Ramir Johnson. He was gunner
Gabor or whatever, right? Because we have
that was Ramir Johnson. Yeah.
So and the reason why that's important, and we are not in the neighbor, or we're not in the. We don't do a bunch of rumor stuff. I mean, leave that to the message boards and all that garbage. But there was garbage that he wasn't playing because of some reason that, he got in some trouble, right? Well, no, he's out there. He just wasn't playing, right? And God, I can't stand all this message board BS anyways. I mean, God, just ridiculous. But he was out there, but he wasn't playing in the positions that all offseason, hey, he's going to be this wide back. I mean, if anyone's going to play a lot, it's going to be him as a wide receiver or as a running back and some kind of hybrid between the two. And that's perfect because as we had a couple of wide receivers not playing, Omar Manning was, that day of, but also as the game went on, you didn't see as much of like Washington and some of those guys, and they were putting Brody Belton and putting Wyatt Lever. And so it's like, okay, well, where's Ramir? I mean, all of a sudden, I just didn't understand.
The last drive is when you think you would have someone like Ramir Johnson in there as that relief valve that he just like leaks out and Casey floats it out there for a pass and you see if he breaks it or something. But no, he's not out there. It's Wyatt Lever or Brody Bell. I just don't get it.
Boomer, can you post that last one again, the last comment there? Okay, I came in late, but to say Casey didn't do good with the dirty pocket is an all true. His huge scramble completion plus the bad snap completely showed he didn't need a totally clean pot. I totally agree with that. I mean, he showed some mobility. And my impression is that he has the mobility to be able to call plays around that. Yeah, he scrambled great. That's a great point that person made there. He scrambled out of 2 different kind of bad scenarios and made plays out of it. That's great. But I want to see some called speed options. I want to see some things where he's actually getting out of the pocket on run plays. Maybe there's a an option motion behind him, but then you hand off out of that up the gut too. Make the defense have to play all sides. This is a team that we ran for 400 plus yards on last year. And I sat in the end zone last year for that game. So I saw all the motion we were doing all the way sideline to sideline, pitching the ball to Betts and those guys handing it off up the middle. I mean, doing a bit of everything. The quarterback had some runs. It was a little bit of everything. And we end up with a 35-minute to 25-minute time of possession lead on them a year ago. That got completely flipped around this year.
Yep.
We had it for 25 minutes. They had it for 35. And we'll get to the defense. So that part of that is the defense is on the defense, why they had it for 35 minutes. Don't get me wrong. Right. But it's just bizarre. Now, one other thing I do want to bring up, because I think it's fair. I mean, we're not trying to totally crap on every single thing here. There was a fumble that we had called on us, a very unfortunate one, a tough one that I don't understand what reviews are. That was, to me, that felt like that was indisputable, that they had a good angle on it. Mike Pierre even said the same thing, that there's an angle where it's like that should be overturned. Yeah. And it's terrible luck for us. But again, I was proud of the team at times early on where that didn't destroy them right there at that time. When they kicked us down to our 2-yard line, it didn't destroy us at that time. So there's some resilience that maybe a year ago, same thing happens to us, and we collapse right there, then and there. I didn't see that this game. Fortunately, that just makes it all the more bizarre why we did the onside, because I felt like we had control over emotions and over the game and everything. And then that one play, we just didn't seem like we were the same team again afterwards.
Yeah, I hear you. And to the comment about Casey Thompson, good under pressure. I'm not saying he wasn't good under pressure. He was good enough to win the game. We did not lose because of Casey Thompson. But after that throw that he made where he scrambled and connected for 59 yards or whatever, he was 6 of 14 with 2 picks, and I think he got sacked twice. It just was a different offense after that. And
it was a different receiving core again after that too, with Vokalek out, and then some other. And if I was Casey, I would be getting frustrated at times. I was throwing, he's throwing the ball to some guys and hitting them in the hands, and it's bouncing off.
Absolutely.
Borg Kircher, had one bounce off his hands, and certainly, the 2 interceptions, like we said, were questionable ones that could have just been caught. So he's sitting there. It's not about putting the blame on one guy, and we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, bench this dude and bench that." It's just, how do we make him more effective? And to me, I guess. And maybe I'm just totally seeing it wrong, but if he's just going to sit in a pocket for 45 times a game, it just seems like we're wasting some of the talent that I was hoping we'd get out of having Casey. I figured that Casey would be able to do some things with his legs. Again, I'm never calling for 25 carries a game out of the quarterback like we were getting out of Martinez. We would get him killed too. That's not what we're looking for, but just there's that mobility that I think can make him even more dangerous. And that's what I'd like to see. There was a comment too from Ken about, when all of our linemen are 6'6" and taller, it's hard for those old linemen to get under, to get low, to get that leverage. That's very true. Go back and watch the talk I had with Rob Zaska, and I flat out asked him about that with like Benhart. Benhart's 6'9", and can you just move him to guard like some people were saying all offseason? That seemed weird to have a 6'9" guard. Now, he brought up a great point about, and I'm already forgetting the guy's name, but he was a tackle for us like about 10 years ago. He's from Hastings. No, he was from Hastings, and he was a 6'9" guy, and they moved him into guard, and he actually played some in the pros. Totally going blank on his name, but it's not impossible, but it just, if leverage is the thing, you want big, tall dudes on the outside, and then you want squattier guards and centers in the middle. That tends to be what your line is built with. But I overall, I think there's things you can do to help the line in some of those situations. And we did one play with Smothers out there running that speed option, and funny how he just found the hole and went through it pretty clean and got about 8 yards. And my guess is that would be there more often if we ran that type of stuff a little more often.